I'm thrilled to have you all here tonight for another exciting lesson. Now, in today's session, we're going to tackle a topic that's been making headlines far too often: data breaches. So, what exactly is a data breach? Well, we'll start by clearly defining it to make sure we're all on the same page. Then, we'll dive into the various methods used by cybercriminals to infiltrate systems across different industries. It's eye-opening stuff, I tell you. But we won't stop there. We'll also explore the different phases of a data breach, from start to finish. This way, you'll be able to recognize the signs and take swift action if needed. And of course, we'll arm you with the best practices and strategies to fortify your defenses and keep your data safe and sound. Throughout our lesson, we'll have plenty of opportunities for discussion and real-world examples. I want you to leave this session feeling empowered and ready to face any data security challenge that come your way. So, are you ready to dive in? Fantastic. Let's head to the next slide and start unraveling the mysteries of data breaches together. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single moment of this exciting journey. Imagine you're sitting at your desk sipping your morning coffee when an email from your company's IT department pops up on your screen. The subject line reads, "Urgent, data breach detected." Your heart skips a beat as you cautiously open the message. The email explains that there's been a security incident and the IT team suspects that sensitive data has been accessed by unauthorized individuals. Panic sets in as you realize the potential ramification of such a breach. But what exactly is a data breach? In simple terms, it's when confidential or protected information falls into the wrong hands. This could be anything from customer credit card numbers and addresses to employee social security numbers and medical records. It's the stuff of nightmares for any organization entrusted with safeguarding sensitive data. Data breaches can happen in a variety of ways. Sometimes it's a targeted attack by cybercriminals who exploit weaknesses in a company's security systems. Other times, it might be an accidental leak caused by a careless employee who clicks on a phishing email or loses a laptop containing unencrypted data. Regardless of how it happens, the consequences can be severe. Companies may face financial losses, legal liabilities, and irreparable damage to their reputation. Individuals whose data has been compromised are left vulnerable to identity theft, fraud, and other nefarious activities. In today's digital age, data has become a valuable commodity, and protecting it is more critical than ever. That's where data privacy and governance come into play. Organizations must implement robust security measures, regularly train employees on best practices, and have clear protocols in place for responding to a breach if one occurs. It's a daunting task, but the stakes are high. Customers entrust companies with their personal information, and employees expect their employers to safeguard their sensitive data. A single breach can shatter that trust and have long-lasting repercussions. So, the next time you hear about a data breach in the news, remember that it's not just a technical glitch or a minor inconvenience. It's a serious matter that underscores the importance of prioritizing data privacy and governance in our increasingly connected world. We all have a role to play in protecting sensitive information and ensuring that it remains secure. Let's continue our discussion of data breaches, but let's focus on the data breach method observed across different industries. Picture this. You're sitting in a conference room attending a seminar on data privacy and governance. The speaker, a renowned expert in the field, takes the stage and begins to discuss the various data breach methods observed across industries. As you lean in, eager to learn, the speaker paints a vivid picture of the cybersecurity landscape. She explains that data breaches come in many forms, each with its own unique challenges and risks. One common method, she notes, is phishing attacks. It's a tactic that relies on social engineering, tricking unsuspecting employees into revealing sensitive information or clicking on malicious links. You can almost imagine the clever cybercriminal crafting a convincing email that appears to be from a trusted source, luring the recipient into a false sense of security. The speaker moves on to discuss insider threats, a data breach method that often goes overlooked. She describes scenarios where disgruntled employees or contractors with access to sensitive data deliberately leak or steal information for personal gain or revenge. It's a sobering reminder that not all threats come from outside the organization. Next, she delves into the world of malware and ransomware attacks. These insidious programs, often delivered through email attachments or infected websites, can quickly spread through a company's network, encrypting files and holding them hostage until a ransom is paid. The speaker's tone grows serious as she emphasizes the importance of regular software updates and employee education to prevent these types of breaches. As the seminar progresses, the speaker touches on other breach methods, such as SQL injection attacks that exploit vulnerabilities in web applications, and man-in-the-middle attacks that intercept sensitive data as it travels across networks. Each example serves as a stark reminder of the ever-evolving nature of cyber threats. Throughout the presentation, the speaker weaves in real-world examples of high-profile data breaches across various industries. She talks about the retail giant that fell victim to a massive credit card data theft, the healthcare provider that had patient records exposed, and the social media platform that suffered a breach affecting millions of users. These stories drive home the point that no industry is immune to the risk of data breaches. As the seminar draws to a close, you find yourself reflecting on the speaker's words. It's clear that protecting sensitive data requires a multifaceted approach, one that involves not just technological solutions, but also a strong culture of privacy and security awareness. You leave the conference room with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to do your part in safeguarding that valuable information entrusted to your organization. In the world of data privacy and governance, staying informed about the latest breach methods is crucial. By understanding the risk and implementing robust security measures, we can work together to create a more secure digital landscape for everyone. So, what are the phases of a data breach? Let's answer this question by imagining you're a detective, investigating a series of data breaches that have been making headlines. As you dig deeper into the cases, you begin to notice a pattern emerging. It's almost as if these breaches follow a script, a series of phases that unfold like acts in a play. You sit down with a seasoned cybersecurity expert, hoping to gain some insight into these phases. She leans back in her chair, takes a sip of coffee, and begins to explain. Well, detective, she starts, a data breach is not a single event, but rather a process that typically involves several distinct stages. She goes on to describe the first phase, the reconnaissance. This is where the attackers do their homework, researching potential targets and looking for vulnerabilities they can exploit. They might scour social media profiles for personal information, or use sophisticated scanning tools to find weaknesses in a company's network defenses. It's like casing a bank before a heist, the expert says with a wry smile. The more information the attackers can gather, the better their chances of success. Next comes the initial compromise, where the attackers gain a foothold in the target system. This could be through a phishing email that tricks an employee into revealing their login credentials, or by exploiting a known vulnerability in outdated software. Once they're in, the real work begins, the expert continues. The attackers will try to escalate their privileges, gaining access to more sensitive data and systems. They might install malware or create backdoors to maintain their access, even if their initial entry point is discovered and closed. She pauses for a moment, letting the gravity of the situation sink in. This is where things can get really dangerous. If the attackers are able to move laterally through the network, they can potentially compromise entire departments or even the whole organization. The expert goes on to describe the data exfiltration phase, where the attackers collect and steal the valuable information they've been after all along. They might siphon off customer credit card numbers, intellectual property, or employee personal data, often using encrypted channels to avoid detection. The scary part is this phase can go on for months or even years before the breach is discovered, she notes with a frown. By the time the alarm is raised, the damage has already been done. Finally, there's the aftermath, where the breached organization must work to contain the damage, notify affected parties, and rebuild their defenses. It's a painful and often costly process, one that can erode customer trust and lead to legal and financial repercussions. As the expert finishes her explanation, you sit back in your chair, mind reeling with the implications. It's clear that preventing data breaches requires vigilance at every stage, from hardening network defenses to training employees to spot phishing attempts. But perhaps most importantly, it requires a fundamental shift in how we think about data privacy and governance. We must recognize that safeguarding sensitive information is not just a technical challenge, but a shared responsibility that demands ongoing commitment and collaboration from everyone involved. As you thank the expert for her time and head back to your office, you can't help but feel a renewed sense of purpose. There may be no such thing as perfect security, but by understanding the phases of a data breach and working together to strengthen our defenses, we can make it harder for the bad guys to succeed, and that in itself is a victory worth fighting for. After covering the different phases of a data breach, let's move on and discuss the laws that cover data breaches by picturing the following. Imagine that you're sitting in a dimly lit conference room, surrounded by a group of executives and legal experts. The topic of discussion: the laws that cover data breaches. Everyone in the room knows what's at stake: the reputation of the company, the trust of customers, and the potential for hefty fines and legal battles. As the meeting begins, a seasoned attorney steps up to the front of the room. She clears her throat and dives into the complex web of regulation that govern data breaches. When it comes to data breaches, she explains, there's no single comprehensive federal law that covers everything. Instead, we have a patchwork of state and industry-specific laws that organizations must navigate. She starts by mentioning the granddaddy of them all, the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA. This law, which went into effect in 2020, gives California residents the right to know what personal information companies collect about them, the right to delete that information, and the right to opt out of its sale. But here's the kicker. The CCPA also requires companies to implement reasonable security measures to protect consumer data and imposes hefty fines for data breaches that result from a failure to do so. The attorney pauses for a moment, letting the gravity of the CCPA sink in. Then, she moves on to other state laws, like the New York SHIELD Act and the Massachusetts Data Security Regulation. These laws also require companies to implement reasonable security measures and to notify individuals and authorities in the event of a breach. But it's not just state laws we have to worry about, she continues. There are also industry-specific regulations, like HIPAA for healthcare organizations and the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act for financial institutions. These laws have their own requirements for protecting sensitive data and reporting breaches. As the attorney speaks, you can see the wheels turning in the minds of the executives around the table. They're realizing just how complex and high stakes the world of data privacy and governance really is. But the attorney isn't finished yet. She goes on to describe the consequences of noncompliance, the investigations, the fines, the class action lawsuits. She talks about the reputational damage that can occur when a company is seen as careless with customer data, and the long road to rebuilding trust. As the meeting winds down, the executives are left with a clear message. Taking data privacy and security seriously isn't just a nice to have. It's a legal and ethical imperative. They know that they need to invest in robust security measures, train their employees on best practices, and have a clear plan in place for responding to breaches if and when they occur. Walking out of the conference room, you can't help but feel a mix of trepidation and determination. The laws around data breaches may be complex, but one thing is clear. In today's digital age, safeguarding sensitive information is a responsibility that no organization can afford to take lightly. It's up to all of us, executives, employees, and customers alike, to work together to create a culture of privacy and security, one that values and protects the data that powers our modern world. Now, let's discuss the best practices for avoiding a data breach. I want everyone to imagine the following. Imagine that you're attending a major conference on data privacy, and as you settle into your seat, you can't help but feel a sense of excitement and anticipation. The room is buzzing with energy as professionals from various industries gather to discuss one of the most pressing issues of our time: how to prevent data breaches. The keynote speaker, a renowned cybersecurity expert, takes the stage and begins to share his insights on best practices for avoiding these costly and damaging incidents. When it comes to preventing data breaches, he says, there are several key steps that every organization should take. It's not just about having the right technology in place, but also about fostering a culture of security and vigilance. He goes on to outline the first and perhaps most crucial best practice: conducting regular risk assessments. This involves taking a hard look at your organization's data assets, identifying potential vulnerabilities, and prioritizing the most critical risks. By understanding where your weaknesses lie, you can allocate resources more effectively and develop targeted strategies for mitigating those risks. Next, the speaker emphasized the importance of implementing strong access controls. This means ensuring that only authorized individuals have access to sensitive data, and that those access privileges are carefully managed and monitored. He recommends using tools like multi-factor authentication, role-based access control, and regular access reviews to keep tight control over who can access what. Another critical best practice, the speaker notes, is encrypting sensitive data both at rest and in transit. By using strong encryption algorithms and properly managing encryption keys, organizations can protect their data from prying eyes and minimize the impact of a breach if one does occur. The speaker also stresses the importance of providing regular security awareness training for employees. Your people are your first line of defense, he says. By educating them on how to spot phishing attempts, handle sensitive data properly, and report suspicious activity, you can turn them into a powerful ally in the fight against data breaches. Other best practices the speaker touches on include implementing robust incident response plans, conducting regular penetration testing and vulnerability scans, and properly vetting and monitoring third-party vendors who have access to sensitive data. Throughout the presentation, the speaker weaves in real-world examples and case studies to illustrate his points. He talks about the healthcare provider that suffered a breach due to a misconfigured database, the retailer that fell victim to a malware attack, and the government agency that lost sensitive data due to an employee's mistake. These stories serve as powerful reminders that data breaches can happen to any organization, regardless of size or industry. They also underscore the importance of taking a proactive, multi-layered approach to security, one that involves not just technology, but also people, processes, and policies. As the speaker wraps up his presentation, you can sense a renewed commitment to data privacy and security in the room. The attendees know that preventing data breaches is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process that requires constant vigilance and adaptation. They also know that the stakes have never been higher. In a world where data is increasingly valuable and vulnerable, safeguarding it is not just a business imperative, but a moral one. By following best practices and working together to create a culture of security, we can all play a part in protecting the sensitive information that powers our digital lives. When it comes to the probability of experiencing a data breach, The unfortunate reality is that it's not a matter of if, but when. In today's digital landscape, where data is constantly being collected, stored, and transmitted, the risk of a breach is ever present and growing. According to the latest studies and reports from cybersecurity experts, the likelihood of a company falling victim to a data breach is alarmingly high. In fact, some estimates suggest that as many as 1 in 4 organizations will experience a breach in any given year. These numbers are even more sobering when you consider the scale and scope of many modern data breaches. With the rise of cloud computing, mobile devices, and the Internet of Things, the amount of data being generated and stored is exploding. At the same time, cybercriminals are becoming more sophisticated and organized, constantly developing new tactics and exploits to penetrate even the most well-defended networks. The cost of a data breach can be staggering, both in terms of direct financial losses and long-term reputational damage. According to the Ponemon Institute's Cost of a Data Breach report, the global average cost of a data breach in 2021 was $4.24 million, with the United States having the highest average cost at $9.05 million. These costs include everything from investigating and containing the breach to providing identity protection services for affected customers and paying legal fees and regulatory fines. But beyond the financial impact, data breaches can also erode customer trust and loyalty. In a world where consumers are increasingly concerned about the privacy and security of their personal information, a breach can be a major blow to a company's reputation and brand. Studies have shown that consumers are more likely to take their business elsewhere after a breach, and that the negative effects can linger for years. So, what can organizations do to mitigate the risk of a data breach? While there's no silver bullet, there are several key steps that every company should take. These include conducting regular risk assessments, implementing strong access controls and encryption, providing employee security training, and having a robust incident response plan in place. It's also critical to stay up to date with the latest threats and vulnerabilities, and to work closely with trusted cybersecurity partners and advisors. By taking a proactive, multi-layered approach to security, organizations can reduce their attack surface and minimize the impact of a breach if one does occur. Ultimately, the probability of experiencing a data breach is a sobering reminder of the importance of prioritizing data privacy and security in today's digital age. As data becomes increasingly valuable and vulnerable, it's up to all of us, businesses, governments, and individuals alike, to work together to create a culture of vigilance and responsibility. Only by staying informed, prepared, and committed can we hope to safeguard the sensitive information that powers our modern world. The rise of remote work environments has had a significant impact on the risk and prevalence of data breaches. As more and more employees work from home or other remote locations, the traditional perimeter-based security model has been stretched to its limits, creating new vulnerabilities and challenges for organizations of all sizes. One of the biggest risks associated with remote work is the use of unsecured personal devices and networks. When employees access company data and systems from their own laptop, smartphones, or home Wi-Fi networks, they may be exposing sensitive information to a wide range of threats, from malware and phishing attacks to man-in-the-middle exploits. Without the same level of security controls and monitoring that are present in the office, it can be much harder to detect and prevent these types of attacks. Another challenge is the increased reliance on cloud-based services and applications. While these tools have been essential for enabling remote work, they also create new data security risks. When employees store and share sensitive data in the cloud, it can be more difficult to ensure that it is properly protected and accessed only by authorized users. There have been numerous cases of data breaches caused by misconfigurations or vulnerabilities in cloud-based systems, highlighting the need for robust security measures and governance policies. Remote work has also made it harder for organizations to maintain visibility and control over their data assets. With employees working from multiple locations and using a variety of devices and networks, it can be challenging to keep track of where sensitive data is being stored, accessed, and transmitted. This lack of visibility can make it more difficult to detect and respond to security incidents, as well as to comply with data privacy regulations such as GDPR and CCPA. To mitigate these risks, organizations must take a proactive and comprehensive approach to data security in the remote work era. This includes providing employees with secure devices and networks, implementing strong access controls and authentication measures, and using encryption to protect data both at rest and in transit. It also means providing regular security awareness training to help employees understand the risks and best practices for handling sensitive data remotely. Another key strategy is to establish clear policies and procedures for data governance in the remote work environment. This includes defining roles and responsibilities for data management, setting standards for data classification and handling, and implementing processes for monitoring and auditing data access and usage. By establishing a strong framework for data governance, organizations can ensure that remote workers are following best practices and that sensitive data is being properly protected. Ultimately, the impact of remote work on data breaches underscores the need for organizations to adopt a risk-based, data-centric approach to security. Rather than relying solely on perimeter defenses and network controls, companies must focus on protecting the data itself, wherever it resides and however it is accessed. This requires a combination of technical solutions, such as encryption and access controls, as well as human-centered measures, such as training and awareness programs. By taking a holistic and proactive approach to data security in the remote work era, organizations can reduce the risk of breaches and build trust with their customers, employees, and stakeholders. As the world continues to shift towards more flexible and distributed work models, prioritizing data privacy and security will be essential for success in the digital age. Let's end our discussion by answering the following question. Are small businesses affected by data breaches? Well, small businesses are not immune to the risk of data breaches, and in fact, they may be even more vulnerable than larger organizations in many ways. While small businesses may not have the same volume of sensitive data as enterprise-level companies, they often lack the resources, expertise, and infrastructure to adequately protect against cyber threats. According to the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report, small businesses are increasingly being targeted by cyber criminals, with 28% of data breaches in 2020 involving small business victims. These attacks can be devastating for small businesses, which may not have the financial reserves or insurance coverage to weather the cost of a breach, including legal fees, customer notification expenses, and lost business. One of the biggest challenges for small businesses is the lack of dedicated cybersecurity personnel and expertise. While larger organizations may have entire teams devoted to data security and privacy, small businesses often rely on a handful of IT staff or outside contractors to manage their technology needs. This can make it harder to stay up to date with the latest threats and best practices, as well as to implement and maintain robust security controls. Small businesses may also be more vulnerable to certain types of attacks, such as phishing and social engineering. With fewer employees and a more trusting culture, it can be easier for attackers to trick small business workers into revealing sensitive information or granting access to company systems. Small businesses may also be less likely to have formal security awareness training programs in place, leaving employees more susceptible to these types of scams. Another risk factor for small businesses is the use of outdated or unpatched software and systems. With limited IT budgets and resources, small businesses may be more likely to rely on older, unsupported technologies that are more vulnerable to exploitation. They may also struggle to keep up with the constant stream of software updates and security patches, leaving them exposed to known vulnerabilities. Despite these challenges, there are steps that small businesses can take to reduce their risk of a data breach. One of the most important is to prioritize data privacy and security as a core business function rather than an afterthought. This means investing in basic security measures such as firewalls, antivirus software, and encryption, as well as providing regular security awareness training for employees. Small businesses should also have clear policies and procedures in place for handling sensitive data, including rules for accessing, storing, and sharing information. They should also have a plan for responding to a breach, including identifying key stakeholders, notifying affected customers and regulators, and taking steps to prevent future incidents. Another best practice for small businesses is to work with trusted partners and service providers who prioritize data security. When selecting vendors or cloud service providers, small businesses should look for companies with strong security track records and certifications, as well as those who are transparent about their data handling practices. Ultimately, while small businesses may face unique challenges when it comes to data security, they cannot afford to ignore the risks. By prioritizing data privacy and security, investing in basic protections, and staying vigilant against evolving threats, small businesses can safeguard their sensitive data and build trust with their customers and partners. In today's digital landscape, data security is not just a nice to have, but a critical business imperative for organizations of all sizes.